you are all able to join us for our office hours focused on all things 21st CCLC. So today we're going to answer those questions, but before we do have a couple of things that we would like to reiterate or to share about NTAC in
This
general.
resource.
So we'll go ahead and start with our about the 21st CCLC NTAC, and then we'll jump into a couple of things.
Welcome to the 21st Century Community Learning Center's National Technical Assistance Center, the premier place for out-of-school time professionals to learn, collect resources, and engage with peers and experts. In collaboration with the U.S. Department of Education, the primary goal of the 21st CCLC NTAC is to support the professionals who operate NETA and LOE 21st CCLC programs across the nation, building their capacity and empowering them in their own educational journey toward learning and continuous growth. More than 85,000 professionals support students and families in over 10,000 sites across the nation that offer academic and enrichment activities to more than 1 million students in high-poverty, low-performing schools during non-school hours. These professionals also support more than 350,000 families and 11,000 volunteers. So the vision and mission of the 21st CCLC NTAC is to ensure that these professionals have the knowledge and skills they need to implement exciting and innovative programs for students and families, and have a place to share best practices, engage with evidence-based resources, and participate in professional learning opportunities to ultimately help students and families build lasting success as lifetime learners. Now is the time to build capacity with the 21st CCLC NTAC, where education meets empowerment.
All right, and just to reiterate about what we would like to do or our goals for 21st CCLC NTAC is that we would like to empower our professionals with the different professional development and resources made available so that they can empower their youth and families to become lifelong learners. So that includes opportunities like today, our office hours, and of course, any other universal and targeted supports that we provide. Because again, we're focused on building the capacity of all of our team in our 21st CCLC ecosystem. Now, before we jump into those awesome questions around all things 21st CCLC, I would like to reiterate the 21st CCLC NTAC priority areas. And if you've gotten a chance to take a look at the website and participate in a lot of the supports that we have available, you'll realize that a lot of the things that we provide are focused on these areas. All right. So for example, addressing the impact of COVID-19, or providing equity of access to resources, supporting students' SEL needs, academic focus areas, statutory and programmatic requirements, and fiscal compliance. Now, most recently, we've been heavily focused on areas such as the academic focus, right? So you may have already seen some toolkits around STEAM or guiding behavior. We have some upcoming trainings around how we can support students' academic and mental health, and the list just continues to go on from there. So without further ado, I would like to just briefly introduce the 21st CCLC NTAC team that we have on the call today for office hours. My name is Shanika Peck. I'm one of the senior TA liaisons on the team. I will be your host for today. And we have Hillary Jones, John Hulse, joining us. They're both senior TA liaisons. And then we also have Andrew Francis, who is one of the many sub-grantee TA liaisons. So we will be answering all of your questions that you have for us today. But before we actually begin, because we do have a couple of questions that came in during registration, I do want to reiterate just a couple of things about this office hours, like the office hours that we've done in the past. is that it will be great for you to introduce yourself in the chat box if you're able to. We will begin with questions, again, asked during that registration piece. If you would like to post any additional questions, you can go ahead and do that in the chat, or you can also unmute your mic and share your questions that way. Now we'll also share resources and solutions in the chat box if that comes up. We'll go ahead and just drop those links there. Any key resources linked in the chat will also be shared in a follow-up email with all of you who registered for this session. Okay, and then like all of our universal supports, this is also being recorded and you will have access to it on our website. So what I'll do right now is I'm just going to go ahead and stop sharing the screen. Again, feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. I think we'll go ahead and just start with a couple of these questions, right? So it is August, it's almost September, time is flying by. And there are a couple of questions around supporting staff, students, families. We're also thinking about back to school. Some of you are joining our call as a technical assistance provider. So you may have questions around that, grant management. We're at a place where we can also discuss evaluation and reporting. So we'll touch on a couple of those topics. So again, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Nice to meet you, Laura from New Jersey. Welcome. Nice to see you. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at those questions. And again, if there's a question that pops up, feel free to drop it in the chat box. You can also unmute your mic and share that way if that works best. All right, so without further ado, hey Sheena. We are going to start with some questions around supporting staff, students, and families. Let's see. We'll start with what professional development opportunities can we offer to help retain our staff? And what I'll do, I'll just open the floor here and we can have anyone from our team to chime in. Hillary, I see that you unmuted your mic. How about we start with you?
Well, my first answer would be start by offering them because so many of our programs and our spaces start with technical assistance. Like we start with the places where people are struggling and we never give them, especially ones who are doing well, who have strengths, who have things that they're doing well at, opportunities to go further, to go deeper. So I'll start by saying that. My second piece of my answer is the plug, and then I'll be done with our plugs. But all of the resources that the 21st CCLC NTAC offers are free to programs, to states, to anyone who's involved in 21st CCLC. And so it doesn't have to be a big expense to offer professional development opportunities for your staff. You may need to pay them for their time, which we recognize as a cost, but if you can eliminate the cost of bringing in the trainer and having the online platform, that's a one thing to consider. I would encourage you when you think about what professional development opportunities, because that really was the question that Shanika asked, is to think about what are the things that you could do that, number one, enhance the skills of the individual that you're thinking about or individuals, but number two, that enhance your program. Because when those two things are connected, that's how you help your programs flourish and grow. And so it may be thinking about something that you're not doing that you wish your program was doing, right? That you have somebody who's the shining star in your program, but you don't have any music or arts programming. Maybe saying to them, hey, we'd love to engage you in this thing that's coming up. That we know that we're aware of. Or if you have somebody who says, hey, I really want to step into a future leadership role, providing them opportunities to go to trainings that may not be targeted at them in their role where they are right now as a line staff member, but giving them those next opportunities so that they can meet their greatest potential. Because when you invest in them like that, they'll stay they'll invest those same things into the youth that they care about and engage in. And that's what professional development opportunities do for your organization, for your program, for your students.
Thank you, Hillary. And I just want to add one more piece here to that, because you did mention just providing those different trainings and workshops for your staff. What I've been seeing a lot of states do is using the data from years prior to kind of inform a year plan around providing tailored workshops. So if you haven't already done so, it's really important that you kind of have a plan in place, just so that everyone is aware of what's to come, what trainings they would like to attend, or what areas that they should probably focus on for the year, especially if you have any objectives or targets that you would like to meet. Is there anything else from the team who would like to share before we move on to the next question? No? All right. Our next question is around staff again. So we're still thinking about staff here. What strategies can we use to recognize and reward staff performance effectively? So it sounds like we're still thinking about not just supporting staff, but we want to keep them in our programs, right? So I'm going to go ahead and open the floor. So again, the question is, what strategies can we use to recognize and reward staff performance effectively?
All right, I'll chime in here a little. I think one of the first things that we can do is to offer regular acknowledgement and praise for our staff. So make it consistent, a part of your culture to always spot when staff are doing wonderful things, or even have a system where other staff can, anonymously or otherwise say, hey, I want to shout out this particular facilitator or instructor or site coordinator for doing this or doing that. So that may include verbal recognition, essentially, in terms of offering that frequently, but also being very specific. And that can either be done in private or in public as well. But being very sincere in praising staff members who demonstrate outstanding performance. I think it's absolutely important. And even those who go above or beyond their duties. Public acknowledgement, of course, in staff meetings, that's important. You may also want to do shout outs through emails or newsletters. Those go a very long way to motivate staff and inspire them. But we could also add other stuff like offering awards and certificates as well, in terms of a staff member of the month or a team player of the quarter, right? Just to recognize those exceptional contributions that staff are making, and it to provide opportunities for more people to recognize. You could also break it out into other categories. So you could have categories for leadership, or staff who probably have been demonstrating innovation or creativity, or staff members who may be committed to students or just care for students, whatever it may be. But find different things that are priority, and offer them certificates of appreciation. But also, if you can collaborate with community partners, service stations, food suppliers within your, nothing goes that far along with them getting a $5 or $10 gift certificate from people like Wawa, whatever it may be. I'm just throwing that out there. But that's also ways that you can. We know we can't always provide monetary incentives as much as we'd like to. But those words of affirmation, praise, but also those small gifts go a long way. But also you could look at end of the year award as well, and where there are opportunities for that, you can do that. I also think that whilst all staff should have opportunity to access training and professional development, I think it's really key that staff who do exceptionally well and continue to exceed and go above and beyond, where there are special conferences that they can go to and continue to expand on their skills. I think that's a way to also show recognition for them, and so they can also advance their career and become better. So they keep doing better and they keep getting those praises, but they can also be able to come back and to share some of that with other staff members as well, and to cause your program to become better each day.
Thank you, Andrew. I definitely agree with you in terms of professional growth opportunities, right? So that ties into what Hillary mentioned before, but I would definitely want to stay with a program if I know that I have areas where I can grow and possibly lead. So those are great suggestions. Anything else from the NTAC team before we move on to this next question?
Shanika, I would just emphasize mentoring, giving the availability for those superstars to mentor others, but also maybe they want to spend some time with senior staff members, or, find out what it's like to do something else, or, even swap roles, or just to expand their horizons of what some of the staff can do, and that they don't get pigeonholed and bored in the same area. Could also be a way of reinforcing things.
Absolutely, right. No one wants to be pigeonholed in the same place, right? We're always looking for areas of growth. Next, we are going to address a question. I feel like this is similar to staff and supporting or just supporting 21st CCLC programs in general. Someone asked, shared, I am not a leader of a 21st CCLC program, but will be working closely with 65 programs in our state in a coaching and assessing role. I want to learn things from their side in order to best serve them. So it sounds like as an outside member, or maybe you're a stakeholder, or if you're focused on providing technical assistance to provider programs, you're probably thinking about what are the most important things for TA providers, whether they're coaching or assessing, to know about 21st CCLC programs that may be unique from the OST space. And we see this a lot, right, with our different states, especially if they have subcontractors. So let's answer this question, right? What are the most important things for TA providers to know about 21st CCLC programs that may be unique from the OST space?
So I think one of the things that we recognize that all OST programs are working to do positive youth development work, right? That's across the board the starting place. But the unique thing about these 21st CCLC programs is that we are looking at them to do some additional level of work around academics, around improving student behavior, and improving youth engagement and attendance. And so those are things that we typically in out of school time spaces attribute to school day, right? Those responsibilities around attendance, around behavior in school, around academic achievement. And these 21st CCLC programs hold responsibility for that work. And at a national level, we're looking at their ability to do that work. And so for somebody who's coming from a traditional out of school time space that may not be so familiar with 21st CCLC programs, it would be important to recognize that we have these measures around academics, behavior, and engagement and attendance that we're working towards in these 21st CCLC programs, and that are being looked at very closely. As a result of that, the work that we do in these programs has to be highly data driven, highly attentive to these needs, where students need this additional support, and how we structure and design our programs around them. And so, although we may in out of school time be doing academic enrichment, it may be very broad. Why in 21st CCLC, the goal is to target it very specifically to, hey, my students really struggle with fractions. Okay, well, what can I do to improve fractions? While that may not be something that's typically thought about in the out of school time space in that same way. And so I think that that's one of the big shifts as you evaluate programs, to say, are they really looking at that data to inform their practice in program day to day, right? is that link being made to these goals? And are we staying focused on that purpose? Because unlike other out of school time programs that may fill the gap of enrichment or childcare, 21st CCLC programs have a very specific purpose around them that is oftentimes different than what families expect, what communities expect, what others expect for out of school time programs, especially a more traditional after school program. Other thoughts?
Yeah, I think you've covered it for the most part. Just to add to that, it's important that you know, TA providers, coaches, you know, align their supports with the overarching program goals and objectives of the 21st CCLC program, but also looking more closely at, you know, key metrics and targets that would have been established at the state level, but also and how that filters for subgrantees as well, right? And in doing that, you know, as Zidra mentioned, depending on where that TA provider may be coming into the picture, you know, whether it's at the beginning of a cohort, or is it that they're being engaged, you know, in the second or third of a cohort, it'd be good to use data, you know, that's available to establish some kind of a baseline as to where those programs are at, just to collect data on what would be some of the you know, additional skills and knowledge gaps that may exist, you understand, and then use that to inform, you know, development of a support program essentially. But building into that some sort of a monitoring evaluation that will allow them to know how are they filling those gaps as well over time, and having that constant feedback loop so they can continue to improve the supports that they provide, you know, for the subgrantees.
Thank you for sharing that, Andrew. And speaking of metrics and data, because that's very important when it comes to 21st CCLC programs and how we develop PD and training and just overall program designing, we do have some questions around evaluation and reporting. The first question is, what are the best practices for measuring the effectiveness of our program? Just going to open the floor here. Although I do know Andrew is very passionate when it comes to monitoring and evaluation, especially with our OST programs and 21st CCLC programs. So how about we start with Andrew, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot.
That's okay. We're gonna start exactly where we left off. You know, Hillary mentioned, and that's key, that every subgrantee, in fact, anybody who's involved in 21st CC programs needs to live, sleep, eat their approved grant proposal, but also looking more closely at the legislation and the guidance that's provided. There's just no way of escaping, you know, understanding fully what are the priorities, the goals, the objectives of this program, and ensuring that as you know you're designing your evaluation framework, working with your, you know, depending on who you are, you may be a program director, site coordinator, you may be an evaluator. There has to be very clear objectives as to how this plan, you know, aligns with the stated goals and objectives, right? And this is because we want to be certain that we are aligned and that we are measuring outcomes that reflect the intended impact of the program, right? So that's important. That's where we want to start. That's a fundamental pillar. Of course, that would also include looking more closely at using our SMART goals, right? To also define, you know, how we will measure and how we will evaluate the program. Now, states do provide guidance for programs as to, you know, the many states have evaluation manuals, essential. In fact, just coming strictly from ESSA, there are measures of effectiveness outlined there as to what steps that should be taken, you know, in ensuring that there is, you know, an external evaluator and what are we looking at, those key metrics, the GEPRAs, etc. But as states provide guidance, I'm sure some of them also may require that programs have some sort of a logic model that, you know, shows the visual relationships between, you know, the resources that are being provided for the program, what will be the key activities, what kind of outputs do we expect to be realized from that, but also the outcomes to be realized as well. And this really serves as a roadmap for the program as to how it will be evaluated, and it helps to identify what should be measured. So we want to ensure that the program is, that the evaluability of the program is established. And that's what a logic model also helps you to do. It sets you up in terms of, determining what's going to be the roadmap. Within that, sometimes some programs are daunted and they find it very audacious. The broad goals, or even the GEPRAs, some percent of students who will improve their performance in assessments, in math and ELA and growing that. So I find it's always helpful to identify the short and medium term, outcomes as well from that. Break it down into chunks, into pieces. Okay, I like to say, okay, if you have a 50% target by the end of the program period, or sometimes you're required to establish, even annual targets, then what kind of activities you'll be doing, per quarter, per semester, whatever it may be, to help you to be able to achieve that. That becomes more manageable. And these are conversations that program leaders want to have with their evaluator. And then within that, they'll establish what would be the approach that will be used for evaluation. That is very clear, but there has to be a clear evaluation plan that has those clear objectives. What evaluation questions will be answered, what kind of measures what will be used to collect data, and that may include whether quantitative or qualitative measures. So you're looking at ensuring that you are collecting those objective numerical data, in terms of these performance and state assessments or school day attendance, or all of that, to help you determine the program's effectiveness, but also the qualitative components in terms of whether you're going to be doing focus groups or interviews, with students, with staff, with parents, with school administrators, to kind of gauge the experiences as well and the perceptions of the services being provided. Because that helps to tell the story from another angle as well. You understand? So that we have that composite, picture as to one, how we're doing on those key metrics, but also how the program being perceived. How do stakeholders, how do service recipients feel about the services, and how we could use that to inform, the way forward. Having those clear systems in place as well for regular data collection, that is a definite best practice. There are some programs who do not hear from, they probably communicate with the evaluators once or twice for the year, right? That would not be sufficient. You understand? In order for us to be using data for continuous improvement, then we want to set the frame either before, at the beginning of the program, the stuff I mentioned before, but then also having those clear timelines, which, as I said, many states do an excellent, most states, if not all, do an excellent job of outlining a data collection calendar, essentially, right? So that they can be continuous data collection on a regular basis, that allows for you to be able to monitor real time what you're seeing. On some of them, there's some things that you definitely can't, but you may use some other kind of metrics in between to see essentially progress monitoring data from the school day as well, to kind of give impression, okay, can we provide some more support for math, but also conversations with teachers as well, or school leaders, that I've also found to be helpful. So doing those surveys with them also help. But you have your baseline data that gives you those starting points, but also you're monitoring academics, you're monitoring behavior over time. Some programs go a step further by also measuring social and emotional development as well, and how they can plug those within their program. I want to emphasize that a big part of a very important best practice is to engage your stakeholders in the process. It should not only be a conversation between the program director, the site coordinator, and the evaluator or the evaluation team, but what some programs have done is to also establish a sort of a local evaluation team that includes those persons, but others. So we want to include participants to some extent. We want to include, students. We want to include parents and staff in the process. I found that where staff know exactly why they need to collect and record this data, that you get a better participation from them in the process. But in many programs, it's only left up to the program director or the site coordinator who knows everything. But where staff understand, and I think what we ought to do is to make evaluation and make, if program effectiveness everybody's business. right? No matter what your role may be, you know exactly why, you know, the plan for data collection, and you know that when the report is ready, that's also going to be shared. So they should not only be on the receiving end participating in the survey or being a part of a focus group or an interview, but you have a student interview protocol, have a couple of students take a look at it. You know what I'm saying? Have some parents give you some feedback. Some evaluators that also goes through a process or program through the process of pilot testing their instruments as well, just to see, you know, how they you know, look at some key response areas and then use that to improve their instrumentation. But the idea is that the perspectives that these stakeholders provide, you know, is very valuable to strengthen the program, but also to give you some insight for program improvement. As a stakeholder, school day staff can also be a part of the process. Your teachers, your administrators, they can share data and insights on what they have. But I like to say as well, you know, as you develop your annual evaluation reports for the state and and to meet federal requirements as well, why don't you package those reports in a 1-page or 2-page, you know, for other stakeholders at a level where students can understand, or where staff can understand, or you mean school day staff or parents. They're not going to probably go through a 10-page or more report, but you may have a 1 or 2-page snapshot on your key findings, some of the challenges, areas for improvement, and that becomes then a space for engagement with them as to, okay, what can we do next? You may also include community members as well, you understand, because they can say, hey, I see that you're having this challenge in your program. How can we as community partners or community members support you in delivering these services or activities and to just help you to meet that? So that's also key. Best practice, and again, at the back end, at the front end, and in the middle of everything, is to focus on those key performance indicators, which Hillary mentioned earlier on. So we're talking about our academic achievement, so improvements in on test scores, right? Some people may collect progress data on report cards or grades or homework completion rates, not required anymore, as part of the GEPRAs, but that gives you some checks as to progress being made and how you can support students. Your behavioral and social emotional outcomes, that's important. More and more as we have come out of, the heights of the pandemic, students have greater social emotional needs, but also how we can impact the relationships within the programs. We want to be able to collect that data and use that. Family and community engagement data, very important as well in terms of the level of family and community engagement, but also what are we covering? And how is that linked to the GEPAs, and how can families support the process is important within the after-school program, but also how can they support overall education for their children as well. We want to improve their abilities for that. Using the kinds of tools that are also able to give you the data that's aligned with what you're trying to accomplish. And as you report and your findings, share it, as I said, right? Be very clear, come up with actionable recommendations, and ensure that there's this process of continuous improvement where we can also reflect on what the findings are saying, and then we can provide the professional development support for staff to be able to implement those recommendations in keeping with the with the needs identified. But overall, make sure that you are compliant with federal and state reporting requirements. That's absolutely important, that whatever we do is aligned to what's required. But I like to say, go above and beyond just compliance, right? Let's look more broadly at also program quality and how we can not just check those boxes, but ensure that we're offering high quality experiences for our young people that connects with real life, real life scenarios and experiences, and allows for them to grow, as per the overall, goals and objectives of 21st CCLC programs.
Thank you, Andrew. You brought up a lot of great best practices. Now, you kind of but you provided a couple of examples that would help us transition into the next question that we have. But before I do, is there anything else from the NTAC team who would like to share around best practices for measuring the effectiveness of programs.
So Shanika, I was just going to build on Andrew's energetic plea to use data to tell a picture and to message that to your staff and make sure that they understand. I think we always have to remember that we have to have a elevator speech ready for whoever we get to see. And so having some data behind us, some of the great points that we're doing with the young people, but also maybe one or two asks for people that might have something to do. And not only being ready to do that ourselves, but also getting our staff ready to be the ambassadors for the program too, and to that everybody involved can be can communicate those important progress goals and also important needs. I think that that really will build on all the good things Andrew just talked about, to be that ambassador with the elevator speech to catch whoever you can catch.
Shanika, I'd love to add my
Oh, please.
little make it really simple. If you're like Andrew just gave us so much information and you want to know like where the starting place is, my starting place, my one bite starting place is, do your frontline staff know your goals and do they know what your progress is towards them? And you would be amazed anecdotally at the number of programs where we get to go and asset, both Andrew and I, and the frontline staff working with the youth, they don't know what the goal is and they don't know whether they're meeting those goals. And so if the answer to those two questions is no, they don't know, then that's the starting place. And then you can dig into some of those other pieces to really flesh that out. So it's what Andrew talked about, that whole picture that follows through from day one with your plan and your logic model through your data and continuous improvement process.
Thank you, Hillary. That was very important because without our frontline staff being on the same page, what are we really doing with programming, right? So those were some great suggestions and best practices. Now, this was brought up a couple of times with what was shared. Andrew, you mentioned a lot about feedback and how we're implementing feedback based on what we're measuring. And you also mentioned that feedback loop. There is a question around there that kind of ties that together. So the question is, can you provide guidance on how to interpret or use the evaluation results for program improvement?
Yeah, I was going to add as well, as you mentioned, staff, just before I answer the question, that also we should, that question is also a question we could ask students as well, Hillary, the one you mentioned earlier on. Do you know the goals of the program? And there are some people, there are schools that thought they're like, kids just want to come and have fun, right? But I think kids must understand as well the balancing act that the program is trying to do. Yes, an opportunity for fun, a safe fun and time with friends, etc., but also for you to, you know, as sometimes we talk about career planning with older kids, and it's about what goals do you have. But kids need to know also within their own goal for personal development that this program is serving that as well. So do you have some needs or areas to work on where academics is concerned, or your social and emotional and behavioral well-being? Here's a space for you to do that in a very fun way, right? So that's also important. Hillary, I don't know if you want to add something to that.
I was just going to say, I said staff, but really,
yeah.
Think all stakeholders, right? Your school day partners, your families, your community partners, your youth, your staff. I just think oftentimes when we visit, the most evident ones to speak to are staff. And so that's where my example came from. But you're right, you're 100% there.
So now as it pertains, Shanika, you know, what to do with the evaluation results. It's a very important question because sometimes that report just goes on the shelf if you want to, or it just goes to check a box that this report was done. And I'd start with something I mentioned before, that it's good for where possible, you know, an evaluator or a program director to you know, remove some of the I'm not gonna call it fluff, but it's more let's get to the real meat of the matter in those reports. So what are the key findings, right? And how can we repackage that for our stakeholders to understand exactly, how is this program progressing towards its goals or not, right? And that may, include then having a sort of you could do focus groups, with students or with other stakeholders to say, okay, these are the key findings. Let's dig deeper into what are some of the root causes as to why, this is happening or this is not happening. Why is it that we're not meeting that key metrics in terms of the number of students who are increasing their performance on, on state assessments, or the number of students for whom teacher-reported engagement in learning is extremely low, right? Or it could be that a very common challenge sometimes is that the response rate into the number of teachers who are returning completed surveys is very low. And I know we have some state partners who are online who can attest to that being a challenge. So we then have to build some sort of an improvement action plan around what's coming from that report. But that requires that we again come together as stakeholders to consult around, what's going to be that plan of action or timelines and who's going to be responsible. But that may include, as I said, repackaging those reports to be more user-friendly for different populations. It may require, if you have younger kids in your program, you can expect them to be reading, those sentences around. But we could be using smiley faces to say, okay, this is how the program is rated in these ways. And that would be the very first, some of the very early actions, early steps in breaking down those results, having stakeholders participating in developing that continuous improvement action plan, and as you're implementing, monitoring that plan as well. So what I've seen done, and what I've also done myself with some programs that I've had to work with, is that we have stakeholder meetings where we present the findings as well. So not just pushing paper, people yes, should read the reports, but let's have a conversation. So those results are presented, right? And then as those are presented, then we get the feedback there, and that is used to inform, probably sometimes I've seen it has informed changes to the evaluation plan itself as well. So in terms of aspects of the plan, in terms of are there additional data points that we didn't consider, you understand? Because we want to see the reporting process as being a living process, not a one and done, but one that we're willing to make changes and adjustments to meet the needs of students and families, but also the needs of the stakeholders as well.
Thanks, Andrew. Is there anyone else from the team that would like to add? We're going to move away from evaluation reporting.
I just
Yes.
want to add one thing. Whether you're state leader or whether you're a grantee, whether you have a 21st CCLC grant, your evaluator works for you.
Mm-hmm.
If the information you're getting from your evaluator does not tell you both your strengths and areas for growth, you need to go back around with them and say, hey, listen, we need to talk about the evaluation design, which Andrew talked a little bit about, but it's important to remember that they work for you. And so sometimes I read these evaluation reports and they look like all glowing things, and it doesn't show those places that are the challenges. And I think this about myself as a professional, and I think for those who are in the room, you probably think this about yourself. Yeah, there's things that I'm good at, but there's things I need to grow in. And so even if my program's really strong, you should be able to identify out of your evaluation report things and areas for growth. So that's all.
Thank you, Hillary. That's really, really important to keep in mind, right? Getting that full picture. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to move away again from evaluation and reporting. And we kind of touched on technical assistance here and there from our other categories. And I also see that we have a new question in the chat box. So what we're going to do is we're going to address that. And this is around professional development, support, and technical assistance. So Sheena shared, I'm curious about NTAC's PD support for state meetings and programs. Is this comparable to what the support looked like in previous years with Y4Y, or is there a new design? At the symposium, it was mentioned that programs can reach out to NTAC for PD and support. How will this look? Sheena, you're in the right place because we have our senior TA liaisons and sub-grantee TA liaisons here. So go ahead, Hillary. I'm going to start with Hillary and then we'll work our way around.
So you knew I wanted to go first, didn't you, Shanika? Okay, so in referencing Y for Y, in the past, I would say that Y for Y typically was targeted at kind of universal support for those who are project leaders. So whether you call them project directors, project managers, whatever that title is in your state. And that was kind of like the box that Y for Y stood in. I believe that the NTAC support allows us to expand in all kinds of ways, both in who the support touches and in the depth of support that's available. So this support can look like anything from support at the state agency level, all the way through frontline staff working in programs. And so some just like very broad examples have included up to this point, working with state agency to review a policy that they're getting ready to release around fiscal responsibilities for subgrantees, or collating information around what's working where on a specific topic. In this case, it was around program income. So, right, providing support for the state leaders around some of those topics that they're wrestling with. For program leaders, that has looked like both support for program leaders and for frontline staff on a variety of topics based on the needs that you have. And so we are also not limited to here's the list of things that we say we can provide training and technical assistance around. But for example, we had a state that came to us and said, hey, listen, our project directors are really struggling with, in this case, in the case that I'm thinking of, they were really struggling with the scope of the work that they were responsible for and how to kind of manage it and have positive relationships with the staff who worked for them. And so we have put together not just one-off trainings for that, but a series of training, and have a plan to do some ongoing coaching and support for those who are still struggling with it, because the support isn't limited to, hey, we'll come speak at your conference, or hey, we'll just come and do this one-time training at your state meeting or program, although we are more than willing to do that. But our goal is really to provide continued support and more intensive support in the places where you need it, because our goal is really to build capacity. So in many states, you work with a TA provider, but there's some places where they just may not have capacity to work one-on-one with a subgrantee who needs a lot of support around positive relationships with their principals, for example. I'm picking on some other examples that we've had come up and that we're working with, or working with a small cohort of community-based organizations who have a grant, who need some additional support around what that high quality academic enrichment looks like, because it's a little outside of their scope of what they've done in out of school time. And so what the process for this looks like is we would encourage you to reach out to your senior TA liaison. I wish I had the map to pull up right now, but I don't. Shanika is one of them. I am one of them. John is one of them. And Michelle Kusi is the other. She is on another call right now. You have John. Great. So you know who to reach out to. John, drop your email in the chat for Sheena. But we would encourage you, if you don't know who your person is, I will also drop my email in the chat, and I can make sure you get connected if you are a state leader. We would love to connect you with your senior TA liaison, have a conversation around what that support could look like, and identify like what those next steps look like. If you are a program leader and you need support, we also will work directly with you to identify what that TA support looks like. For the state leaders on this call, you should know that we will always reach out to you first. So if one of your subgrantees, one of your grantees reaches out to us, says, hey, we need support around X, Y, and Z, we will reach out to you and say, hey, such and such grantee reached out. They're looking for some support around this. We'd love to provide it, but just wanted to connect with you first, because we know that there's things that you have in process, things you're working on. We do not want to overstep our bounds, but we want to be able to provide that support. And so I just want everybody to know that, so that you know that there are resources and support available. We'd love to give them, but we want to make sure everybody's on the same page. So John, Shanika, anything I'm missing in that explanation?
No, I think that was great. I just do want to reiterate that we can work with all stakeholders who are at the table to provide support 21st CCLC programs. So whether you are working with an OST network, or maybe you have your own technical assistance resource center, we work with all of those who are involved in providing support. We are happy to, again, focus on building capacity. Sometimes, we just don't have the time to meet or observe all programs. And so we've done that, or we're actually in the process of doing that with another state as well, right? Conducting a program observation so that we can follow up with individualized coaching to support those programs where we're seeing those specific needs. So when you meet with one of us, just know that we're going to review a number of, details and data and things like that. We really want to hear about your needs. And it's not just, again, with your programs, it may be within your own department. So we also understand that some people are coming into this role with limited experience, or they may have been operating under 21st CCLC programs, but from a different, with different responsibilities. And so it may look different this year. So again, it's really focused on your needs, and it's not one size fits all. So that's definitely something just to keep in mind if you haven't already spent some time with, speaking with your senior TA liaison.
Shanika, one more thing that I don't know that I said, but we've also, in some states, we're working really closely with the TA provider for that state. So if you subcontract to your after school network or whoever it is, that kind of work, we have some states that we're kind of their partner. We fill in gaps where they say this is an area of strength for us, or showing up and speaking at their conference because they have some topics they didn't get covered in a call for presenters, right? It's very open, it's very flexible. But again, that's work that we would do with you as the state leaders support, and you're saying, hey, this is what we want to see happen in our state.
And just to piggyback on all that other good stuff, just so you know, as soon as we know that there's a request for some assistance, we will rally around and find a time and way to have a virtual meeting with you, and you'll probably see a number of our faces on the call, even though we're assigned one-on-one to different states. We all kind of chip in to help. And the ones I've been on so far, I'm really excited for the states that are already participating. So I encourage you just to make that first email or whatever to let us know you want some to work as a partner with us.
Awesome. Thank you, John. And so this information can also be reiterated in our meetings with you, just in case, just for you to think about what we can do to support you. Another question around technical assistance is more about how we can connect, or programs can connect with other subgrantees. So is there anything that the team can share around how programs or other subgrantees can connect with other subgrantees to share best practices and resources?
So we are starting a community of practice in the month of September for new program leaders. And I will, in the next couple of minutes, drop that chat in the link, but that would be a great spot, especially if you have a new program leader who would be interested in engaging, or if you are a new program leader. It's a great way to connect and hear what other people are doing, to wrestle with some of the challenges you may face. And get advice, information, and resources that are connected to the topics that we're talking about. We would also encourage program leaders to come back for office hours and ask questions. Come with those questions, store them up, send them when you register, because we would love to help provide resources, but also we would like these to be spaces and places where we're not the only voices in the room, but where all of you jump in and say, hey, this is a way I think about this. This is a resource. This is a strategy for this. And so we'd encourage you to share in the chat. As Shanika said at the beginning, we can ask people to unmute, but jump in and connect in those ways.
Yeah, sorry. And also, we have opportunities for programs to share their best practices during our live with 21st CCLC NTAC. So tomorrow we have a live focused around sustainability, and there we are also we're highlighting those programs. We're doing a really good job around sustainability. So that's another opportunity for programs to connect and hear those best practices. I'm going to go ahead and drop that in the chat as well. I know we have a couple of minutes left, so we're going to go ahead and get some links in the chat for you. So again, we have our live with 21st CCLC NTAC tomorrow. If you would like to share that with your sub-grantees to hear about best practices around sustainability. Hillary is sharing that first community of practice in the chat. She has that shared. Thank you, Hillary. What else? Let's see. I think we kind of touched on everything else here. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to go ahead and wrap up. If you have any additional questions, go ahead and drop it in the chat. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Just to go over any last minute items, and just a reminder that our office hours, just like our universal events, are recorded, and so you can find that in the on the archived resources page on our website. Go ahead and take a look at that. Sorry, I'm losing my words here. And of course, we are looking forward to another office hours with you all. And just another way for you to stay informed. We usually wrap up with this slide, but if you haven't already done so, take a look at what we have so far on our website, www.21stcclcntac.org. In addition to communities of practice coming out next month, we also have a new tool to support project management or program management. So that, be on the lookout for that. That will be released next month as well. You can always send us an email about any questions that you may have at info@21stcclcntac.org. If you aren't already signed up for our newsletter, please feel free to take the time now to sign up for our newsletter. And you can go ahead and follow us on social media, whether it's X or LinkedIn. We're constantly sharing updates or trends that are emerging in OST space. Right now, we have a poll release just for you to give us feedback on this office hours. Take a second or two, it's pretty quick, to fill out that form for us. We greatly appreciate any feedback we can get from you all. And that's about it that we have for this office hours. I'm looking forward to the next one. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Sheena. Thank you, Frida. Renee, thank you for joining us. Dorothy from New York, thank you for joining us. We definitely recognize a couple of you here, so I'm happy to see that you guys are coming back just to hear more and share with one another. So thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you to the NTAC team.